Good evening, everyone. Good evening to all our participants who have joined us for today's webinar. And it's a special webinar because we have invited Decode Age, that is a microbiome testing, as our partner for this webinar. So today we have two speakers, that is Dr. Manjari Chandra and Mr. Darshit Patel. So the topic for our webinar is your gut affecting your cancer recovery? And we'll be discussing about all the aspects leading to cancer recovery with respect to gut and its microorganisms and all the linings, what basically affects the human system. So to begin with our webinar, I'll just share the context of what the webinar is overall going to be. So starting with Dr. Manjari Chandra, we have topics which would get covered are why gut matters in cancer recovery, how treatment can damage the gut health, and how nutrition plays a very important and a critical role in healing. And we also will discuss few evidence-based recovery strategies which can help all the cancer patients and the caregivers. Then we would have Darshit Patel, who would speak about microbiome, understanding microbiomes, then about the testing and how it basically helps out, and also a recovery personalized map. So to begin with, I am introducing Dr. Manjari Chandra, who's a functional nutritionist at Everhope. She has 27 plus years of experience and clinical expertise in nutrition planning, protocols, therapeutic nutrition, integrative oncology, and all the healing mechanisms related to gut, anti-inflammatory nutrition, immune nutrition, complementary therapies. And also she has been a leader in writing and an author for a lot of famous books, bestseller books. So here is our Dr. Manjari. I'll hand over to her and ask her to present.
Good evening, Dr. Vrindali. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody who's joined us for the webinar today. Today, we basically, at Everhope, we work with oncology and we work with patients who are undergoing cancer treatments and are recovering sometimes. One of the major issues that happens with people who are undergoing cancer treatment is that the treatment itself is very, very difficult because it is harsh in nature and it creates a lot of collateral and systemic damage in the body. One of the major organs that gets affected is the gut, which is the digestive tract. We commonly call it the gut, but if you look at what the gut is, it's essentially from your buccal cavity to your rectum is the gut. So the entire buccal cavity, esophagus, your stomach, your small intestines, your large intestines, and associated organs, the liver, and the pancreas, they all become part of the gut. And it gets highly affected, and that is the reason for a lot of issues: weight loss, muscle loss, nutritional deficiencies, poor immunity. Multiple things happen because the gut getting affected during cancer. And that is what we are going to discuss today, and how you can support your gut health so that you have better prognosis and better recovery with cancer. So we were basically talking, we're going to today speak about how the gut gets affected. What is it that's going wrong with the gut? Why do we need to support it? And how supporting your gut health and your digestion can really change the outcomes and improve recovery in cancer treatment. And thank you, Darshit, for joining us for the session today. So essentially, why is gut health critical? As I was trying to say, the gut is not, a lot of people think it's just the intestine, but from your mouth to your rectum, the entire passage is the gut, and there is a lot going on there: digestion, assimilation, a lot of absorption, elimination, everything is happening in your gut. But depending on how healthy or functional your gut is, it sort of affects a lot of systems in your body. For example, if you don't have a great functioning gut, your immune system can get affected because 70% of your immune system is really sitting in the small intestine. It's not something which is defined to a part of the body, but it's spread, the immune system, and 70% of it is in your small intestine. The gut also is the guard. The inner lining of your small intestine is basically the guard or the barrier between what enters your stomach and your intestine and what gets transferred to your bloodstream. So toxins, pathogenic bacteria, harmful substances are blocked by a healthy gut lining so that these do not get transferred to your bloodstream. Beyond that, a lot of people who feel a little low and depressed while they're undergoing cancer treatment or anxious about the treatment is not just because of the fact that the treatment is difficult. It is also because of the fact that because of compromised gut health, they're not able to make something called neurotransmitters. These are chemicals which are biochemicals that are made in your gut and travel to your brain and allow you to think rationally and not feel anxious or depressed or worked up about things. Similarly, recovery. Now, after chemotherapy and radiation, you getting a chance to eat well and absorbing all that nutrition is super critical so that your recovery from the treatment and of course also from the primary disease is heightened. The gut is linked to the immune system. I was trying to say to you that 70% of your immune cells are in your small intestine. In fact, if you look at the immune system, there is lymphoid tissue, which is your primary defense, especially against pathogens. We're looking at microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, parasites, viruses. Now, these pathogens are the ones that cause our immune system to react or to act against them because they may be disease causing. The gut is what contains those immune cells which can fight these pathogens. And if you don't have a great gut, the immune system gets compromised. So your first line of defense is not there. That is the barrier that the intestine has. Also, there is something called dysbiosis, which we'll also talk about in detail, but generally it means that in the gut, there are a lot of bacteria. Now, for reference, we are more bacteria than human cells, almost 6 to 10 times more bacteria than human cells. Now, these bacteria are all over the body, but a large part, a majority of them are in your colon, which is the large intestine, and in the distal part of the colon. These are the gut microbiome. They are the healthy bacteria or the commensal bacteria that help your body do multiple metabolic processes and multiple other pathways they're involved in. When we have a poorly functioning gut, we also are referring to a gut dysbiosis, which means decrease in the number of healthy bacteria and increase in the number of something called unfavorable bacteria or fungus or parasites, which start dominating your gut microbiome. And for your body to have anti-tumor immunity, you have to have a healthy gut microbiome. And therefore, looking at the gut and the gut microflora makes a lot of sense, but because not only will it keep your immune system working properly, it will also give your body a chance to fight the tumor or the misbehaving or the precancerous or the cancer cells. Treatment which we are talking about is largely mainstream oncology treatment, which is super critical. You have to take this treatment because it's your main line of therapy against the tumor or the cancer that you have. Now, once you have cancer, the doctor outlines a treatment plan for you, which includes certain sessions of chemotherapy, radiation sometimes. If it is localized, we also use radiotherapy, and then there is immunotherapy, hormonal therapy. Now, all these therapies are intended to destroy the tumor or limit the tumor. But unfortunately, they not just destroy, limit the tumor, they also create collateral damage. So they also cause harm to multiple other systems in the body. For example, in the gut, what they do is they destroy the mucus of the intestinal lining. So the intestine lining is heavily lined with mucus, which does not allow friction to happen. So there is a smooth passage of food through your intestine. There is less inflammation if the mucus membrane is present properly. But the mucus dies away with strong chemotherapy and radiation. Then we spoke of dysbiosis, which is essentially the healthy bacteria getting destroyed and poor bacteria and parasites and fungi multiplying instead. And then there is a common term which we call the leaky gut. Essentially, what's happening is that the innermost lining of the intestine, the cells are tightly bound to each other by proteins. These tight junctions between these cells start breaking down. And there is literally channels or leaks that are created between these cells, causing a lot of nonsense to leak into your bloodstream. And when I'm saying nonsense, I'm saying antibiotics, medications, toxins, a lot of bugs also that start entering your bloodstream. So the barrier's dysfunction happens. We also map it. There's something called the GI map that you can do to see how your gut barrier is. And then there is malabsorption. Now, this is a very, very significant problem that happens with chemotherapy and radiation, that your gut is now does not have the optimal capacity to absorb every nutrient that it should. So you may be eating nutritionally dense food, but whether your gut will be able to absorb it or not is questionable when you're undergoing strong chemotherapy and radiotherapy or radiation. And therefore malabsorption of specific and critical nutrients is common. um, So yeah, we were talking about the leaky gut. This is what basically trying to say. You have a healthy barrier when these junctions of cells in the innermost lining of the small intestine are very tightly bound. There is mucus which is there, which lubricates your intestines. There is healthy bacteria thriving there, and there is enough nutrition being absorbed through the food that you eat into your intestines and eventually into your bloodstream. But when you have a compromised barrier, then you have these junctions breaking down and you have leakages and channels, or so you have something called a leaky gut. You have permeability, intestinal permeability. That is what gastrointestinal mapping can pick up. And there is bacterial translocation. So not only are we talking about poor gut microbiome, we are saying something called SIBO can also start, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So bacteria, unhealthy bacteria, start multiplying in your small intestine. They shouldn't be there. They should actually be in the colon. So there is translocation of unhealthy bacteria. And there is, of course, chronic inflammation, because these drugs are a bit toxic and harsh on the body. They keep our body inflamed and the gut also inflamed. So now the dysbiosis bit that I was trying to talk about is essentially the gut microbiome not being optimal. You don't have the healthy, good bacteria in large numbers. The unhealthy or non-beneficial bacteria are the ones that are taking up all that space. Now, what happens, how does this really go about, is that when you start chemotherapy, it starts killing your good bacteria. Now, pathogenic or unhealthy bacteria and sometimes disease-causing bacteria start multiplying more. Normally, Escherichia coli, Enterococcus, and there's a whole bunch of them. And then you also start losing something called small chain fatty acid producing bacteria. You know, the acetate, propionate, butyrate, which is required for these bugs, also is not there. Then the inflammation spikes happen. The treatment causes more side effects. The side effects cause further dysbiosis. Once you have dysbiosis, it complicates recovery. It makes digestion difficult. So people end up with GI disorders. They feel pukish and nauseated, or constipation, or diarrhea, or bloating. And then appetite gets compromised and overall recovery gets delayed. Um, Chronic inflammation, again, there is, when you're looking at chronic inflammation, we are saying you have an inflamed body which is not healing. Let me try and explain this to you with a very small example. Let's say I have a big cut on my hand because the table, let's say this table that I'm sitting on has a splinter. Now that when I hurt my hand with that splinter, I get a small cut. Suppose every day I sit on that table and every day I hurt myself, that injury will not heal because I'm continuously hurting myself. And this sort of an injury, which does not go away and continues to stay for a long time, becomes chronic injury or chronic inflammation. Now, because the medications are harsh, they keep the body inflamed and do not allow it to heal well. This inflammation then it extends recovery, and it can be measured. You can actually measure inflammation in the body, the inflammatory markers, the interleukin 6, TNF alpha, common ones like ESR, HSCRP or inflammation markers. They can pick up the cytokine storm. There is less formation of butyrate and also acetate and propionate. There is more fatigue and there is persistent weakness with chronic inflammation. Now, what happens is that whenever we talk of cancer treatment, we know that because the medicine is intended to destroy the tumor, limit the tumor, the only thing that can start building up your body is basics. Basics include breathing, they include movement and strength. But one of the larger, pieces of the puzzle of recovery is food. Your nutrition becomes the biggest part of those denominators in recovery. And because nutrition is so non-negotiable in cancer, we try and help people, or we try and work on the gut to ensure that all these changes that have happened in the gut are taken care of and inflammation can go down. So you can heal the barrier, the lining. Remember, we spoke of the intestinal barrier that gets broken. There is a leaky gut that happens. You can repair the barrier by taking the right form of amino acids. There's something called L-glutamine that literally cements it. Collagen peptides can improve it. You can restore healthy microbiome, or you can literally re-inoculate your gut with healthy bacteria by using the targeted probiotics, which are live bacteria, and something called prebiotics, which is fiber and fat, which becomes food for the good bacteria. Then, of course, certain things like antioxidants reduce free radical load, reduce inflammation, omega-3, polyphenols, flavonoids. All of these are anti-inflammatory in nature. So these are some of the things that are used to improve the gut lining. There's enough information, clinical understanding, enough research, which now makes us understand that if we are looking at a certain particular aspect of recovery, we can target with a certain type of food or a very targeted form of nutrient. It could be an amino acid, it could be even fat for that matter. But today we also are talking about certain essential amino acids, which become very critical for rebuilding the gut lining. Glutamine, we already spoke about. Now, this is critical during mucositis. If you get mucositis, which is, the buccal cavity has little ulcers, or you have some sores, or you have some amount of redness and difficulty in chewing food, then glutamine can also help, but it also helps with the intestinal cells. Collagen peptides, they sort of support the intestinal barrier and help it rebuild. Arginine is an essential amino acid which we know is required for immune function. It is helpful for wound healing. And then there are branch chain amino acids which allow us to have a better muscle. They preserve the muscle. They also help in metabolic recovery. When I say metabolic recovery, we're saying better sugar management, better fat breakdown, better protein breakdown, better absorption of these macronutrients. Beneficial bacteria, we're looking at restoring it. So largely we already know the word prebiotics and probiotics. So just roughly putting it here, prebiotics is essentially food for your good bacteria, which means it is either some form of largely it is some form of an insoluble fiber, which your body cannot break down. So the bacteria can now feed on it. The common ones are resistant starch, fructooligosaccharides. It is also found in mother's milk, inulin, and psyllium husk, which we also call isabgol. These are all prebiotics. A lot of vegetables and fruits also have prebiotic fiber. A lot of nuts and seeds also have can work as prebiotics. Beyond the fiber, even fat is a form of prebiotic food. And then you have targeted probiotics. So probiotics, as I was trying to say, is uh, is is live bacteria, live healthy bacteria that can be repopulated in your gut. So there's a fungus called Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a beneficial fungus. There are many species of lactobacillus. There is ruteri, and you of course know of the fact that lactobacillus is also present in when you when you make curd from milk. The lactic acid that is formed in the curd from the lactose is formed in the presence of lactobacillus bacteria. Then there is also bifidobacterium, falciparum bacterium. So the multiple bacteria which are helpful, which we use in a probiotic form and in the form of a food so that we can repopulate that bacteria. Of course, when I'm talking about all this, remember, all this is a generic conversation. Everybody that comes to us or everybody who's a cancer patient will be needing a specific protocol. Not everybody has to jump onto all of these things, but you make a protocol out of this and multiple other things that we use in our practice. Um, then the third part of we were talking about is the inflammation in the gut. That can also be addressed to some extent with the right fats. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. So are all forms of plant compounds. So polyphenols, antioxidants, flavonoids, these are all potentially anti-inflammatory. And there are, of course, of berries, of turmeric, of ginger, garlic, green tea, vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, colorful vegetables that can, reduce the antioxidant load. Sorry, they can reduce the free radical load because they're antioxidant rich. And they reduce something called reactive oxygen species in our body. There's also something that I wanted to quickly talk about, which is, the third point here, bone broth, something that is almost magical for cancer patients and people in recovery. So very well cooked bone broth. It could be chicken. It could be even something called paya, which is the large bones of another animal, mostly a goat. That has been found to have natural gelatin and collagen, which seals the intestine and reduces the permeability. So it's extremely good because it also improves digestion in many ways. Then there is short chain amino acids. There are three main short chain amino acids. The C1, C2, C2, C3, C4. We're looking at butyrate, which is C4, propionate, which is C3, and acetate, which is C2. Now, these acetate, propionate, butyrate are extremely powerful fatty acids, and they are not only helpful for cancer recovery. Actually, if you look at short chain fatty acids, we know now that mental health and multiple other things are dependent on the production of short chain fatty acids. Now, this short chain fatty acid is actually extremely healing. One of them, as we said, is C4 butyrate. And what it does is it becomes the fuel for the intestinal cells. It also restores the junctions. Again, we were talking about the leaky gut and restoration of the junctions. I'm not getting into too many technicalities, trying to keep it simple. It also has anti-tumor properties. It also builds up the immune system by specifically targeting the Treg cells. There are certain foods that can improve butyrate production in the body. So fermented foods, resistant starch, again, prebiotics like high fiber vegetable, which have insoluble fibers, can increase the butyrate production in the body. Another thing that we help patients with when they are undergoing cancer to improve gut health is to see how they are eating and what timing and what sort of a schedule they follow, So, and at what stage of treatment are we introducing what? So, for example, during treatment, we focus on protein, glutamine, bone broth. We may not initially introduce probiotics. We may introduce them later. And then when a person is in recovery, when the treatment is over, then we introduce, targeted probiotics, fiber, anti-inflammatory foods. And in later recovery, where the person is now, trying to get back to normal life, then you look at maintenance nutrition, you look at long chain fatty acids, you look at polyphenols and even flavonoids for that matter. Uh, Now, this is actually very interesting. This is from large studies and large meta-analysis, which shows us that if you optimize nutrition, there is a extremely good outcome with cancer. But these are specifics that now we know of. For example, with the optimized nutritional intervention, the mucositis recovery is faster by 30%. The chemotherapy-induced diarrhea reduces by 40%. There is better immunotherapy response up to 50% with a healthy gut microbiome. And there is 3 to 4 times faster microbiota recovery when we do the right nutritional interventions. Um, just quickly, we call it the ABC of recovery at Everhope. And when we are looking at nutritional and integrative approach to cancer at Everhope, we look at the ABC of the system. So we address the deficiencies, we build back strength, and we allow the system to be calm, inflammation to be low, healing to be faster. So address deficiencies, just to quickly explain what it means. You rebuild essentially what is missing in the first place. So if there are any nutrition gaps, you correct that, whether it is with proteins and vitamins or whether it's with antioxidants or fats. You support immunity and oxygen transport. So ensure hemoglobin levels are okay. There's enough breath work. Oxygen saturation is high. Review the lab reports. We continuously keep reviewing lab reports, week on week or every 15 days to ensure that as your nutrition is adjusted basis what your reports are showing up and what is it that your body specifically requires. For example, if the WBC count is low, what is it that we can do in nutrition? If the platelets are low, if there is low hemoglobin, what specifically can be done? Building back strength is essentially the second part of the integrative approach. You build back the person's muscle, weight, digestion, appetite, stamina, strength. So that is built by multiple things. We're looking at breath work, strength training, nutrition, probiotics, personalized supplements, personalized meal planning. So all of this is put together for that person so that strength can be built back. And of course, the one of the most important parts of recovery is a calmer system, more a space of a parasympathetic zone. So we ensure that there is better sleep, better breathing, better mindfulness, enough rest for recovery. So all that also is taken care of. So for example, if a patient is not able to sleep because of ABC reasons, there can be multiple reasons. It could be pain, why the person is not sleeping. It could be nutritional deficiencies. It could be not enough sun exposure. So you address that specific thing and ensure that the sleep also gets improved. I will now hand over to Dr. Vrundali. Thank you for an extremely patient listening and request her to take it from here.
Thank you so much for an insightful talk on how gut health can be helpful. Thank you, Dr. Manjari. So now I would like to welcome Mr. Darshit Patel. He's a computational biologist and is a chief scientific officer at Decode Age, where he has led development of two product verticals, that is longevity and microbiome testing. So an utter microbiome enthusiast, he is fully dedicating in solving microbiome data and its application in healthcare. So I would like Mr. Darshit Patel to please share their slides and continue with the talk. Also, thank you everyone for your questions, and we'll be taking it after Mr. Darshit Patel is done with his presentation, and we will take cumulative questions for everyone.
All right. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Vrindali and Dr. Manjari, to get me here. And to be honest, Dr. Manjari has not left Dr. Manjari has covered most of the things, so I don't know. I'll just skim through some slides, but I do have something to add at most of the places, so I would do my best trying to do that. Before I start, I just want to confirm if you all can see my screen.
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, and you can hear me as well, right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. So it's indeed amazing that humans essentially are not an organism, but are an ecosystem. And it is amazing because it's been centuries, probably, yeah, millennials, that there have been this specific kind of bacteria, viruses, fungi living inside our body. And it's only in 1980s or 1990s that we were able to even tell that, okay, humans are not sterile organisms. There are already existing bacteria within us. And it kind of takes me back to every time that I've heard this line in my life, that every disease starts from the gut and every good mood starts from the gut. Or a very patriarchal statement that we all might have heard, that the way to a man's heart is through the food or is through the gut, right? So it all comes back in a very scientific way when I look at microorganisms, and it kind of tells me a story that it's not just us as organisms that have evolved, but there's a lot of things that have evolved inside of us as well. The first insight of this was from a very fantastic study where scientists were looking at Hasda tribe. Now, Hasda tribe happens to be a very peculiar tribe which has not been in human contact for a long time, living in the Amazon jungles. And they took all their stool samples, tried to look at their microbiome profiles, and then ours, which is the urban areas of the world. And they saw a drastic decrease in the number of bacteria that we have in the gut. Does anyone here have any clue why this would have happened? I see two major reasons for that to have happened. The first is the agriculture revolution, and the other is the milk revolution. We have narrowed down the food that we eat to so little things that our bacteria can only do that much. And you'll see that the functionality has also changed, right? Someone who is living in a Hasda tribe is not hitting a gym 4 times a day, 4 times a week, and doing cardio exercises. Obviously, the natural lifestyle demands that, but they still happen to have one of the fittest bodies, at the same time gut and their metabolism. That's probably because the functional behavior of their microbiome is so expansive. And that is first thing that we might have lost as we evolved as an organism to live in more urban areas. But before we get to the details of what does who or who does what inside your gut, the overall makeup of the gut is very important. And I think Dr. Manjari highlights it very nicely. Just in the name of energy conservation, I have sensors in my office, so the lights would go off every now and then, but please bear with me. So, there's 96% of bacteria living inside your body, and only the 4% is made up by viruses, fungi, and archaea. And the bacteria is not only in the human gut, which is known to be intestines, or usually when we hear the gut, the word stomach comes to mind, but stomach is only a small part. So thanks, Dr. Manjari, that you elucidated that a gut is entirely from your oral cavity to your anal cavity. And there's microorganisms present everywhere. They're present in the mouth, they're present in the stomach, small intestine, large intestine, colon. Not just that, on your skin, as well in your respiratory tracts, as well on your vagina, as well in the urinary. And people are even looking at blood and tissue. Tissue specifically is important because recent studies have found out that cancer microenvironments, or the cells and the microenvironment surrounding the cancer, also has resident microbiota, which generally produce a lot of endotoxins. So there's a lot of discovery happening on the microbiome side of things. But is microbiome all about bacteria? Is it all about viruses or fungi? Essentially not. And this is why the functional part becomes very important. I'll give you a basic example to understand this. I, living in India, am a human being, and so is a person living in USA, a human being, and so is a person living in Australia, a human being, and so is a person living in Nigeria, Africa, a human being. Yet all of us are completely different. Why does that happen? Right? Because we have this small variation of genetic capabilities inside our cells. Right? Same happens to be true for bacteria as well. The same bacteria which is found in an Indian gut and the same bacteria that are found in the US guts are completely different genetically. So the function that the X bacteria will carry out in India will be completely different than the X bacteria carrying out in America. In simple terms, what happens to be a probiotic in America could simply be a pathogen in India as well. So it is really important that we do not get stuck to the bacteria, but we rather look at the functional potential. Just like we have genes, bacteria also has genes. So rather than looking at which bacteria there is, we should be looking at how many genes of a certain function is present in that bacteria. And that's essentially the clear distinction that we have developed our test based on, which is to look at the functional potential. So how does this economics or the metabolic economics of the bacteria and the human host works? We eat the food. Food is made up of its own natural chemicals, right? Like example, we say that there's a lot of phosphate in banana, right? Or there's a lot of fiber in pulses or lentils, right? Or there's a lot of protein. This is the macros. There are micros, which are chemical substances literally present inside your food. And these are not artificial chemicals. This is what the plant is supposed to have naturally. This is what we call substrates. Like we feed on our food, these substrates is what is fed on by the bacteria that helps them multiply, number one, or number two, it helps them produce a certain molecules. So microbes have genes and enzymes. Food has substrate. Microbes are going to break down these substrates, and it could be one of the. It could produce metabolites like SCFAs, which Dr. Manjari has talked about enough as well, or it can produce gases like hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, or we can say methane, which are all produced in our gut. I'll touch upon a very embarrassing aspect of our lives, which is passing gas, right? Sometimes we pass silent gas, but smells very bad, right? Sometimes we pass out loud gases, but it doesn't smell at all. So that's the clear distinction between when you pass out silent gas, you're releasing a lot of H2S instead of methane, and that's going to be a problem for you. That only happens when your food is not digested well. And similarly, we have neurotransmitters. In fact, we focus a lot on B vitamins. A lot of B vitamins are actually produced by the gut itself. It is never going to be produced by your own body. It's the food that you eat. It is broken down in a certain way by these microbes, and then it is given to the given out as a vitamin B9 or B12 or B6. So it's not the bacteria that is influencing your entire body. It's the food that you eat, the way it is broken down by bacteria, the metabolites that are secreted, which then now will escape out of the gut, mix it into the bloodstream, and travel at all the different places. For example, liver. There's a lot of bile acids which are actually transformed by the gut bacteria and then made usable into the small and large intestine. Even in terms of brain, I think we already heard Dr. Manjari saying that the gut bacteria influences your mood, right? How does that actually happen? Serotonin, 90% of it is produced in your gut. This serotonin in the gut is going to interact with the vagus nerve that connects your brain and the gut, and then this vagus nerve is going to send signals into your brain which is going to affect the emotions. In fact, GLP-1, which is the hot topic of everyday lives in our in the wellness or even in the medical categories, right? So this particular GLP-1 peptide is also released by the gut bacteria. Similarly, immune responses, again, very well elucidated by Dr. Manjari, that a lot of immune cells are actually present in the gut lining. And we all know that when we talk about cancer, immune system happens to be the most important aspect or the most important system. So it's how your bacteria constantly influences your gut lining where the immune cells are residing, and then the immune responses are kind of carried forward. The same applies to your heart. We have already talked about LPS. There's even TMAO production that is happening from the gut that eventually influences the cardiac cycle. But we're not here to talk about all the organs, are we? We're here to talk about specifically cancer. And as much as gut bacteria are involved in increasing the cancer, it's also involved in restricting the cancer growth. Now, both ways, it's a double edged sword. It's not actually double edged, but we can select for which kind of bacteria and functional pool should stay that is going to help you recover better. Now, some of the ways that the gut microbes would actually prove harmful if they are present during a condition of cancer is going to be that it will produce a lot of reactive oxygen species if the species are capable of doing that. In fact, these bacteria release some metabolites which enters inside the human cells, goes inside your nucleus, and breaks down the DNA that you have. Now, double-stranded DNA breaks are one of the key hallmarks of cancer as well. Similarly, there'll be endotoxins that are released by the gut, and it actually increases the inflammation of your inflammation in your gut as well, and that eventually carries forward as well. On the flip side, it's all the ways that this gut microbiota could also help you, right? Just like it releases inflammatory signals, it also releases anti-inflammatory signals. SCFAs again are the more we talk about it, the less it is. It's probably one of the biggest arsenal of molecules we have in our body that is protecting you from every single thing. So these particular SCFAs, acetate butyrate propionate, or these category of compounds are going to enter every system and going to modulate them. And that applies equally for cancer as well. There's some very specific bacteria that are known to cause the cancer progression as well. And we tend to look at this when we're dealing with doctors who are currently involved with us, who are looking at cancer and microbiome. One is the sulfate reducing bacteria, Bacteria fragilis, Campylobacter jejuni, some species by Salmonella, Escherichia coli. All these have innate genetic capabilities to actually recruit tumor cells or actually down-regulate the activity of the T cells, which are involved in killing of the cancer cell. So these are some of the signs you could always look at when you're looking at a microbiome report itself. Now, we talk a lot about what is microbiome, how is it helpful, and how is it not. But little do we talk about how microbiome is actually measured, right? Now, imagine this: if I give you a, if two hospitals give you a thermometer, right, and both of them takes a fever test for you. One says that your temperature is completely all right. The other says it's at 101. Would you trust the thermometer or not? That's the whole problem. With microbiome, testing technology becomes one of the biggest deal breakers, right? So most of the tests that you see is based on 16S RNA sequencing. That will tell you which bacteria exist, but it will never be able to consider that what kind of functional genes do you have. Because like I said, if the bacteria is present but it doesn't have the gene, then the functionality is not going to be carried out, right? So that's the first thing. Some of the tests in the world are going to use metatranscriptomics, which looks at gene expression of the bacteria, but the data analytics problem here is it's completely unsolved. So you cannot really trust the data. So we had to go for a safer choice, which is shotgun metagenomics. Complicated in itself, it gives you comprehensive data set. You just don't know how to pick out the right thing. And that's the bit that we have particularly cracked for Decode Biome as well. So what do we actually report in the test? And that's where it gets interesting. The functional potential is something that we overly stress about. The reason is that I think in the last session by Dr. Manjari, we were talking about something called probiotics and how they're helpful or not. What we have often seen is that if you consume a probiotic, which is a certain number of species, and when you take the test again, those species are not found, right? Does that mean the probiotics did not work? Not always. What happens is, now this is one of the most beautiful things I've seen in science. You take the probiotics has very nice genes to produce, say, something like SCFA. Your virus detects it, the virus living inside the gut, which is not COVID-19 types, it's just internal ecosystem. This virus is going to go to that probiotic, pick up the necessary genes, go to the another bacteria which is already residing in your gut and deposit it there. So now this probiotic is not essentially needed, but the genes have been taken out and put it there, which is why I keep on stressing that just looking at bacterial profiles is not going to get you anywhere. What's going to get you somewhere is looking at the functional potential, and which is what we essentially try to report in this. We look at the acetate butyrate propionate functional genes active. We look at different gases. We look at GABA, dopamine, serotonin, and we also look at what genes in this bacteria can actually break down or ferment carbohydrate, protein, and lipids. All of these will give you different kind of products, and that's going to tell you a lot about it. Usually we see that carbohydrate fermentation, if it is ideal or high, it's actually good because it actually helps in releasing SCFAs. Whereas something like a protein digestion would release tryptophan, which would rather go and activate the serotonin production pathways in the human cells as well. But that doesn't mean we stay away from themselves. Sometimes the pathogen species are very important to detect and look at. So we usually report the species part or the taxonomy part, as we call it in science as well, where we break it down to pathogen, probiotics, and we also tell you if that certain bacteria is inflammatory in nature or not inflammatory in nature. That could be very, very helpful when you're looking at immune responses inside the gut as well. Now, coming down to, of course, we can use microbiome for all the possible understanding of the patient profile, but it's also necessary that when we talk about food, and like I said, the substrates in the food is going to make sure how the bacteria is going to process it and give you the right metabolites. So we have this food intelligence system where we take in your data, we take in your microbiome data, we consider the pathogenic load, the different functions, your clinical symptoms, and then come down to a 4 list recommendation, which is restrict, consume, moderate, and avoid. Right now, this is one of the most difficult things to follow, but when you do, it gives you fantastic results in the course of about 1.5 months to 2 months. Now, the problem is that when you look at just microbiome, most of the food tends to go into restrict, especially if you're suffering with the disease already. If I restrict all the important things, for example, broccoli, we all understand broccoli is one of the healthiest food available. But if your microbiome is bad, you cannot consume broccoli, so it will go into the restrict list. But does that mean that you should stay nutritionally deficient? No. Once the restrict phase gets over, there's a reintroduction system. Now, this FODMAP, which we all know of, where reintroduction comes from, but we have kind of tweaked it in a different way. Each food has a certain level of tolerance inside your gut. So our system actually scores each and every food in the restrict item and tells you which one would be the best one to start reintroduction with and which will not be the best ones to start reintroduction with. So these kind of insights is what we try to give through the food system that we have developed based on the microbiome data itself. So I would probably stop there. I've already taken a lot of time, but always more happy to answer the questions than keep blabbering about all the things that I love and find beautiful in microbiome science.
Thank you so much, Darshit. Thank you so much. It was a great talk, and thank you for taking us through the microbial world. So it was a good insights. Thank you. So now I'll just take few more minutes to explain about what all programs do we actually have at Everhope, just to give an overview of what these programs could help cancer patients and caregivers with. And before that, I'll just share a number as well as few links for referrals for all our webinar entries. So I'll just go through the presentation again. So just giving you an insights of what the Everhope program basically stands for. So it is a comprehensive program which basically includes all the personalized meal plans, personalized diet, and also supplement support, which basically helps out every patient to get and to have all the things required at a particular stage of your treatment or beyond your treatment. With that, we also have targeted nutritional guidance. With that, we also help with mental wellness integration, behavioral coaching, and also smart monitoring. That is, we have a dietitian on call who would help you out in and out for all the queries and all the insights which are required for diet planning. Then we also help with holistic alignment for different integral therapies, as well as help you and support with mind body recovery with meditation suggestions and also strength training suggestions. Along with this is the particularly proper program chart what we basically have. That is the duration for 3 months program, as well as it has personal sessions with Dr. Manjari. Then we have weekly calls with dietitian and also customized meal plans. With this, we also give customized recipes depending on your choice and on your cancer type. And the benefits you all will notice after joining to this integrated program is your recovery is much faster as compared to anyone who is not approaching for this particular concept. So this basic concept is helping out with a lot of recovery and also better tolerance of your current treatment. With this reduction in side effects, fatigue, which is the major problem what every cancer patient goes through, enhancing digestion, nutrition absorption, and helps out with immunity and also with mental calmness, basically improving your quality of life. So as a exclusive offer for all the webinar participants, we have come with this 4 offers. So I have also shared the link for individual offers which we are planning to give for all the participants. So please enroll it via those links, and we will also share it on your message so that you can have benefits from these. And that's all about the webinar, what we currently discussed, the complete recovery framework, where we spoke about nutritional strategies and barrier repairs, as well as how the molecular profiling could help us out. These were the sources, as well as now we are open to discuss and open to take up questions from all our participants. So there are two ways people can respond. Either they can ask the questions on the chat box, or they can directly raise their hands, and we would be happy to take up the questions. So as I see, there are already a lot of questions on in the chat box. So I'll take one of them first. So the first question was, which diet will be good, veg or non-veg, milk for recovery of cancer? Dr. Manjari, these are questions for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, good question, because a lot of people are confused whether they can eat animal food or they should completely become plant eaters while they are going through cancer treatment. So there's really no need to completely avoid animal food. But yeah, you have to be careful with what you're eating and how it is sourced. What is it that you're are you procuring from your meat from? Because we don't want you to eat anything that has antibiotics and hormones and funny things present there. So we tell you to look at the sourcing of your meat. But yes, the other part of the story is that plants not only are free of these antibiotics and hormones, the additional benefit that plants and plant food comes with is that they have active plant compounds which are now well known to be anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer. So you have all forms of plant pigments and antioxidants and polyphenols and so that is where plants have an advantage over meat. The other thing is that for people who require enough protein to ensure there's no muscle loss and better recovery, we do include bone broth and eggs and clean meat if required.
So the next question is, any replacement for bone broth in for vegetarians?
Yeah. So you see, the thing is, bone broth, the whole idea is to use the bone marrow, the red bone marrow, where the erythropoietic and hemopoietic capacity is there. But for people who are vegetarians, it's perfectly fine. I mean, there's a lot of vegetables. You could obviously do a vegetable soup, plenty of fresh vegetables cooked for at slow flame and made into a nice soup. And if you can add some fat to it, like coconut milk, or maybe some good olive oil, that would also increase the potency of the soup. So you could do a vegetable broth also.
The next question is, what foods we must have to recover from chronic colitis due to radiation and chemotherapy?
So you see, anything like a gastritis, colitis, all of this, wherever you hear this word dis, it essentially means that there is some changes in the lining of that particular part of the intestine. Now, those changes could be anything. It could be inflammation. It could be proper changes where there is ulceration and there is a lot of sometimes some polyps. So there is changes in the lining of the intestine. When you say colitis, it means that the colon now sees changes in its lining. We already discussed about this in the session, that the changes in your gut lining are happening because sometimes of the treatment itself, because the chemotherapy or radiation may cause these changes to happen. The only way you can handle this is to reduce this inflammation by taking anti-inflammatory food. So there's a whole bunch of herbs and spices that can help. Improving the gut microbiome will help. Of course, other things, like we spoke of certain specific amino acids that can seal the gut lining, omega-3 fats. So there's a whole bunch of nutrients that can be helpful. There are other things also that we talk about. For example, if a person has increased inflammation in the gut lining, it could be colitis or diverticulitis or gastritis. You also look at eating in a way that you give a body a chance to heal itself, which means eating in a smaller window, eating less frequently, are techniques by which you give your body a chance to repair itself. So those things can be used.
If I may add a little bit here, Dr. Brindali,
Yeah, sure.
it's It's very interesting because radiation, what it does is selectively kills certain bacteria inside your gut, and there's enough evidence around that. And that allows the pathogens to grow, which is allowing the colitis to aggravate as well. So I think definitely the fermented food side of things should help because it will try to restore the probiotic side of things inside, and it kind of answers the other question as well, which has just come across, which is about loss of appetite with radiation, right? It's because it's the bifidobacterium strains which are usually producing the GLP-1, which is controlling your hunger, and that is particularly susceptible to die as well. So I think those kind of probiotics might help, but Dr. Manji would make that call, not me. So yeah.
So the next question is wheat inflammatory? And also, is green tea better than regular milk tea?
So the wheat and the sugar question is almost constant. Wheat, dairy, and sugar. There's so much of social media, so much of information, and so everybody's saying that wheat is the worst food, and so is milk and sugar. Agree with them to a large extent. We have overused our wheat. Everything we eat is just bread and cookies and roti and pizza base and noodles. Everything is just maida and the worst form of wheat because we are refining it, processing it, genetically modifying it, hybridizing it. So we've literally engineered our wheat to make it the worst for our physiology. So that's where wheat loses in a big way. But that does not mean that people have to completely go off wheat. Small amount of wheat can be consumed as long as the wheat is not highly processed and the person can tolerate it. So these are specific things that we look at when we are planning the meals and the nutritional intervention for a patient. But on its own, sugar, direct dairy, and wheat tend to be inflammatory and they are highly processed and milled and refined. And not the best foods for cancer.
So there's one more question. How to increase the appetite during radiation treatment? Mentally, there is aversion of food itself. So how to overcome these?
Yeah. So, this appetite bit, a lot of people think that loss of appetite is a problem with the treatment. Loss of appetite is a symptom of a condition. Now, that symptom may happen because you may have inflammation, which can cause you to lose appetite. You may have low hemoglobin. One of the symptoms of anemia is loss of appetite. You may have poor digestive enzymes. Your protein digestion is not happening in your stomach because of the drug which is changing your optimal capacity to digest larger molecules like protein. Now, in that case, if you address those specific issues, if you improve your hemoglobin, restore your iron levels and ferritin levels, if you improve your digestion by taking the right digestive enzymes and prebiotics and probiotics, and if you're able to reduce overall inflammation in the body, you can absolutely build your appetite back and then, go back to eating the nutritionally dense foods.
There's one more. How does diet work in target therapy, like hormone therapy? Placebo will be Sybil taking for 3 weeks and 1 week off from medicines. Recovery window is very small, unlike chemo or radiation.
So, in hormonal therapy or targeted therapy, the intent is that the therapy is only targeting that particular tumor or that particular misbehaving, progressively aggressive growth that is happening in the body, and therefore it comes with its set of side effects which are very specific to targeted therapy. The hormonal therapy, on the other hand, is a completely different ball game because we use hormonal therapy or oncologists use on hormonal therapy specifically in hormone dependent cancers, and so both of them, like chemotherapy, we do know that there are certain side effects which are common, but everybody's tolerance and response to these treatments is very unique. And how a patient will respond to a targeted therapy is dependent on multiple factors. What is really going at the background, what comorbidity, what age, what are the other conditions, how advanced the cancer is. So, I mean, I can just say that, if you have a smaller window, you should sit with somebody who's qualified with nutrition and integrative approach to cancer, who can help you build a program around your treatment pathway. So everybody has a very unique treatment prescribed to them. So depending on what the cycle is, how much time you get in between, sit with somebody to build a program around that specific prescription that you have.
Next is protein powder good as a source of protein intake?
Again, very, where there's no blanket answer to this. It's not that protein powders are the best thing, but it's not that they are very bad. Again, some people are able to tolerate whey protein and respond to it, some don't. Some people are not even able to tolerate protein, so we sometimes give them digested proteins, something called peptides, dipeptides, polypeptides, tripeptides. So it really depends on on the person and how they're responding. But it's not a shortcut to take care of your protein requirement. Dietary intervention with the right protein sources, as much as possible, is always the first line of correcting protein deficiency.
The last question is what all to include in the diet in fourth stage pancreatic cancer as the appetite is very low?
See, what happens in pancreatic cancer is pancreas have multiple jobs to do in the body. Of course, we know that they produce hormones, insulin, glucagon, but pancreas also produce enzymes, lipase, amylase, are pancreatic enzymes. And so for digestion of fat and digestion of protein, you require pancreatic enzymes. Now, when you have pancreatic CA, the pancreas are not able to make enough amount of these enzymes, and typically anybody with pancreatic cancer is put on an enzyme support. A very common one is creon, which is a pancreatic enzyme which is replicated through an oral drug. So if you're taking that, you may be able to eat better. But still, if that does not happen, then multiple other things can be done. For example, first is to change the food that you're eating. Many times we continue to eat the same food that we were eating when we were not sick. So nutritional requirement for pancreatic cancer stage 4 is specific, and it is very different from what normally I and you would be eating on a daily basis. We look at what type of fats can be used. We look at what type of easy digestible proteins can be used. We also look at building up the digestive capacity of the body by replacing the pancreatic enzymes. By the way, there are certain plants that can help in pancreatic enzymes also. So all that can be incorporated. So even a person with pancreatic cancer in an advanced stage may be able to eat a lot much better than what he's otherwise, consuming. Many of the times it's also, sorry, just adding here, many of the times people with pancreatic cancer, especially, we see a lot of them now, have a lot of GI discomfort, and if you address the GI issues, if you're able to take care of the gut, the indigestion, the bloating, the diarrhea, the constipation with the right intervention, then the capacity to eat better can come back. So appetite can be restored to a large extent.
One of the participants has asked that whether we support consultation for person with gut issues.
Of course, I mean, although we at Everhope, we largely work with oncology, but we also have people with gut disorders, with autoimmune conditions, with metabolic disease coming to us. So we also, even if your primary issue is gut and that is what is bothering you, that also can be addressed. By the way, Darshit is here, so he checks your gut microflora and tell you what's going on with your gut bacteria, and we can help improve that also.
There's one more question. Does immunotherapy cause autoimmune disorder in the gut?
So the immunotherapy, if you look at it principally, the intent of the immunotherapy is to awaken your own immune system and sort of give it more potential and capacity to fight the primary tumor. That's the whole concept. In that process, there are certain medications and certain interventions used to allow your immune system to work. Now imagine an immune system which was supposed to only wake up when there was a serious pathogen is now working overtime. Yes. So with an overworking immune system, you are actually replicating what happens in an autoimmune disorder. This is what an autoimmune disorder is also. You have a hyperactive immune system. So there can be some sort of autoimmune changes that may happen in people with immunotherapy, though it's not completely always the case, but it's not completely ruled out also. There is a possibility.
That's it for all the questions in the chat box.
Yeah. So as Dr. Vrindali said, we're here at Everhope. Our intent is to help cancer patients, help better outcomes, improved recovery, better prognosis with cancer. In fact, we help people who have fought and won cancer understand how they can survive and reduce the risk of recurrence. So we work on those platforms also, though nutrition and other holistic interventions are largely what we do. We are not restricted to that. In fact, we forgot to talk to you because today we were focusing on the gut and the gut microbiome. We also do integrative oncology, which means that we use integrative therapies like hyperbaric oxygen, ozone, high dose of antioxidant therapies, IV nutrition, and supportive therapy for patients who are undergoing cancer.
And soon we are also launching our own marketplace. We'll be sharing the details with all the webinar participants and giving them access to our first marketplace as well. So thank you, Darshit. Thank you, Dr. Manjari, for a great session. Thank you. Thank you, all the participants. And good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Bye, Darshit. Bye-bye.